All right, so we're back. A little bit delayed, but nevertheless. What do you want to talk about? I want to talk about agents. I love talking about agents.
Agents. Okay.
We
There's a
actually have
lot.
two things.
Mark Zuckerberg is hiring a lot of Asian people to join his company.
Not Asians,
Hundreds of millions
agents.
of dollars per person. Yeah.
Not Asians,
Yeah.
agents.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because if it's 15, he spent $15 billion to buy half of scale so that he could get Alexander Wang, who's the 28-year-old wonder kid from MIT,
hmm
to lead up his efforts there. That's 150 people at $100 million. So if you think about the pool of AI talent that's quote unquote the best, um, I doubt there's 150 people in the world. So that was probably a very good move by his part on his part.
Yeah, definitely.
On the other side, I think that there's probably a lot of people who are in the first 500 top people who are like available for $10 million or 5 million. And so there's kind of like if you start thinking of it like that way, there's kind of like a lot of top end that you could get.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you think that this changes the market? So one of the things that we saw during the ZERP days was folks like yourself, as an engineer, you were highly sought after. There was a very tight labor market. This seems even steeper of a sought after labor market. Is it Alexander Wang is really smart, but he did come up to speed in the industry in only a few years. So do you think there's a lag? And like how long does this kind of situation persist, right? $100 million is quite a lot of profit, for people to come in to the industry and become quote unquote experts.
Yeah, I mean, they've been working on it for decades. Will it
Right.
cost
But
people long term? I don't know. Yeah, I guess no, it's a bubble. It'll go
not
down.
not everyone who's getting paid $100 million has been working on this for decades. That's not true. That can't be true.
They have PhDs, so that's at least 5 to 7 years.
Do you think they all have PhDs? I don't think
Yeah.
so.
I mean, not Wang, but almost everyone else has PhDs. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. All right.
Yeah. I mean, I guess. Hmm. Yeah, I'd be surprised if people were making innovations in this without PhDs.
Why is that surprising? I thought the math was really simple here. Maybe explain to us why it's actually quite difficult to make innovations.
The math is not simple. Though you have to do partial derivatives, and it's very particular how do you have to code it all too. You can't just throw it into the LLMs are not doing the algorithmic coding for this.
You don't think the LLMs are suggesting algorithmic codes that are then
No,
confirmed by
I've
humans?
tried it for different AI when I was doing AI research. It wasn't doing anything interesting. It was just repeating papers or
Oh,
combining the
okay.
two nonsensically. Just didn't really do
You
anything
couldn't be like,
interesting.
hey, I want to make an implementation for this particular algorithm. Can you write it for me? And then it wouldn't be able to spit out something in PyTorch that you could then
It's
modify.
it's so little finicky. Yeah.
Yeah. The only reason why I say that is I just watched the John Carmack video. So he was the founder of id Software. They made Quake and a bunch of computer games. And he gave a presentation that's up on YouTube about 4 days ago where he talked about the Atari set and how he was trying to like basically had an entire different methodology for attacking this problem. And he's not a PhD in AI, and he was able to come up to speed. Now, granted, he's one of the greatest programmers ever, but I think if somebody who's quote unquote old and not in this space was able to come up to the frontier, I think other people can do that as well. It's just my suspicion.
Yeah. John Carmack started working on AI last decade. He literally said he's shifting away from VR and doing totally focused on AI. So this isn't something new he's been doing. He's been doing it at least 5 years.
Right. But it's not 10 years, right? Because your comment was basically like these people have been doing this for 10 years.
Oh,
Like
yeah. I mean, the algorithm. I mean,
the other
Transformers
thing
are
is,
only
if you
from
watch John's
2017.
speech, he talks about how he did a bunch of shit wrong. And then eventually he was like, first, I wanted to pick games that no one ever did. Then I was like, there's no benchmarks. Then I was using a custom language. Then I realized, fuck it, we should use PyTorch, right? So like he basically was pulled directly into the main line so that he could like accelerate to the frontier, which suggested to me that it was possible to get to a point where you could do useful work in AI with relatively little what's that called? Can you stop that? Can you just pick one? Relatively little like you don't need to be studying under one guy at Carnegie Mellon for 3 years to get your PhD and then spend another 4 years doing applied work at Google before you're able to make contributions. That's basically my point.
Yeah, I mean that's true. That's true. Yeah, you have to have a pretty rigorous level of access to some of the training and background, but you can get caught up quickly. I mean, I got caught up again last year, so takes just a certain amount of skill, but I mean some ability to read papers and things, which doesn't happen your first year of college.
No, I would assume that like LLMs could help you make sense of the papers, but maybe you tell me otherwise.
This Adam at DeepMind made a point that he's using LLMs to understand like crazy physics that he didn't learn or kind of surface learned. So
yeah,
it sounds like it is useful. Yeah, I think it could be useful. It can also lead to hallucinations a lot, so you want to really double check it.
I definitely think you could take a class. So like all the MIT classes are available online. So I feel like you could take an AI class and then use the LLM, and then a combination of those two things probably get you pretty far.
Yeah, I think AI learning is going to be a bigger thing. I think it's pretty underutilized now, even though it's probably good enough for a lot of things right now. Like, could it replace college already today? Maybe.
Definitely. But I think the part of college that's going to stay is this sort of mating part. So I don't think that college per se is going to go away.
Yeah, but why? You can just go to a city. Why go to college? You can just go live in a city and get way more benefits of all that.
There's a density problem.
In a city?
Like, yeah, with the city, there's a bunch of people who are like not filtered. So like, for example, if you go to a quote unquote Ivy League school, there is at least either an admissions or wealth or woke filter that you have to pass to get in there. And so given that you've passed that, then you can identify those people at the school. Like we both had the experience where I wouldn't say either of us came from quote unquote the elite. So when we were in school, there was clearly like different subgroups, and those groups were, meeting and networking and that kind of thing. And the school facilitated that. And like when I go to San Francisco or whatever, now I would say they're affinity based subgroups, but they're not necessarily wealth or intelligence or whatever religious affiliation,
Interesting. So yeah, it is a good filter. So is there some way to build a city or neighborhood? I guess it
that's literally what a college is.
But that's funny because you have Fair Housing Act, which doesn't let you do that. You can't run an IQ test to let people join your neighborhood. It's quite illegal. But the only place you're legally allowed to do that is in a college, and that's when people form their friends.
Well, and the complicated part about the college thing is that they now use sort of religious precepts to override the merit-based. And so it's not really clear to me that it will be like a quote unquote IQ filter for that much longer.
I mean, that's...
MIT, Caltech, yes. Princeton, Columbia, Dartmouth, no.
I think there's plenty of great minds going around, and it's these universities have been getting smarter once they've been able to start to diversify from their previous elites only privileged background. And so
wait, you think that the university is getting smarter? I totally disagree, but I'd love to hear why you think that.
Well, the acceptance rate used to be very high, like 30% at these places. And then once they realized that if they got people who weren't just in one certain social strata, they could get smarter people from all over the country. And even though they've done really hard work to try to diversify it, still most people come from, like at Princeton, come from New Jersey, which is like statistically improbable, right? So if they really want the smartest people in like Wyoming and North Dakota, and they got some of them, but not all of them. So they're still trying to get all these people around the world that are the best. And
I think it's a great story. I'm a lot more cynical about it. I think they changed their admissions policies to go after yield because it was selected for in the quote unquote rankings.
do you know about Hargaden?
Harkaden, can you talk more? Was that the person at our school or?
Yeah, the dean of admissions at Princeton, who like they used to attach a photo to every application.
Yeah.
And it clearly had a little bit of bias in a way that wasn't necessarily about IQ.
Yeah.
It's more about the aesthetics of the photo.
Yeah.
And there's a noticeable change. Actually, many people noticed when they stopped doing that with the new dean of admissions.
Where was he dean of admissions for us? Because you're kind of an ugly motherfucker, so I don't know.
Yeah. Don't have to be so insulting, Michael.
What was that?
Don't have to be so insulting. Even
I was trying to be funny. I'm sorry your feelings were hurt. It was not my intention to hurt your feelings.
I can see you've been to couples counseling. So
true.
So it's clearly true. Yeah. And so it's interesting that that's one other concrete example that people have changed in the makeup of it. That's improved in terms of
So you think because we accept uglier people, then the school's gotten better?
If you remove sources of bias that aren't about merit of academics merit, academic merit. I mean, shift it. I mean, maybe you prefer beauty in your admissions criteria.
Yeah, I don't know. I've thought about this a long time. Like, what is the ideal mix of intelligence, wealth, and aesthetics? So I don't know. I don't know what the answer. I partially feel like aesthetics is really important. Like, certainly the next version of humanity will be organized around aesthetics rather than GDP. And so I find.
Will it?
Yeah.
Because brains are solved now with AI, so only thing left is aesthetics.
Well, because I don't think that there's much value to I think there's going to be a huge collapse of sort of the reductionist logic that comes from Newtonian physics. And we're going to shift over more towards quantum physics, which is much more probabilistic and perspective based. And there's no way to, so like in a Newtonian physical sense, there's this idea that there's an algorithm that explains the entire system.
The clockwork universe.
Yeah, clockwork universe, exactly. And it's deterministic and all these kind of things. I don't believe that people believe that that's a thing anymore, especially in physics. I think all of the research that's showing that the observer affects the outcome of the experiment suggests that individuals are manifesting at least some part of reality, as crazy as that sounds, which would suggest that an organizing principle around some kind of quote unquote spiritual, quote unquote intangible, like beauty, like as the organizing principle of the society, would lead to better outcomes than sort of like a model like that's very reductionist that actually doesn't describe the universe.
That's very That's very philosophical. One thing I learned at philosophy in Princeton is that a lot of philosophers have always connected aesthetics to ethics. And
and I think if you look
really aesthetics, which is very interesting, and when you think about it, there's really no way to conclude otherwise. So it's kind of weird.
I completely agree, and I think a lot of people are really uncomfortable by that, but I think it's great. So back to your question about should Princeton have changed its admissions policy away from aesthetics? I kind of feel like maybe it shouldn't have.
From an ethical standpoint, you're saying?
Yeah, because I don't think that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong. But I would prefer. I think if you're going to pick a metric, I think aesthetics is a pretty good metric. Although there's kind of anyway. So.
Interestingly, if they kept the photos, they would do a better job understanding like people's I guess maybe observed races and things if they wanted to try to create diversity there as well.
Well, I think there's also a complexity thing now because you can look at people's photos and determine their political orientation with like a very high probability. And so I think that's I think that's kind of not necessarily. Yeah. Anyway, we'll find out.
All right, I'm gonna end the
I'm gonna just
stream.
say
Great to
this.
see
I'm
you.
gonna say this as we sign off.
Okay.
With regards to AI agents, my belief is coming to the point where I think every person is not going to be communicating with a single agent, her style chat GPT. I think we're all going to be basically like chief agent officers that are managing tens of thousands of agents on our own. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which we can get into next week, but I just wanted to plant that as an idea.
The question is, will you be higher status if you have tens of thousands of agents versus 1,000 agents under you?
I think the answer is actually not in the number of agents. It's the amount of money that you pay to certify the agent's work. And I'll talk a little bit more about that next time.
Cool.